Good morning, good evening. Thank you for joining us for the second day of the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum's fourth annual summit, Strengthening Resilience, Expanding Prosperity. Please welcome Ms. Dorothy Atwood, Senior Vice President of Global Policy at the Walt Disney Company, to introduce our first session, a conversation with the Honorable Minister Thakur.
Thank you. Thank you, USISPF, for giving me this opportunity to welcome the Honorable Minister for Information and Broadcasting and Youth Affairs and Sports, Mr. Anurag Singh Thakur, for his fireside chat with Sanjay Gupta, who's Vice President and Country Head for Google. I must congratulate the USISPF leadership that their fourth annual Virtual Leadership Summit, Strengthening Resilience, Expanding Opportunities, is taking place immediately after the exceptional visit of the Indian Prime Minister to the United States last week. As Prime Minister Modi said after his meeting with President Biden, the India-US relationship is destined to be stronger, closer, and tighter, and closer economic linkages between India and the US benefit people at both sides. I'm delighted to meet Minister Thakur, albeit virtually, and I, like all of you listening in, look forward to hearing his plans for promoting India's dynamic, vibrant, and thriving creative sector, and his vision for expanding the collaborative opportunities of the creative sectors of two of the world's largest democracies. I would also like to congratulate the Government of India for declaring audiovisual as one of the champion services sectors of the Indian economy, as the sector plays a huge role in harnessing India's vast human resources potential, not only in terms of income generation, but also for job creation and export earnings. The Indian creative economy has become a powerful, transformative force, and its potential for development is vast. I'm sure that under Minister Thakur's leadership, who after all is a four-time member of Parliament, a former chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology, and former Minister of the Game of Cricket in India and Minister of State for Finance, that the stakeholders can look forward to a fresh set of policy initiatives to develop India as one of the key media and entertainment hubs of the world and make India a multi-sporting nation. At Disney, we understand as a stakeholder with long and deep investment commitments in India that the right set of enabling policies can attract investments and create jobs, and that India's creative economy, led by traditional sectors like film production, television, print, and radio, and the emerging sectors like video on demand, internet streaming, animation, gaming, and a diverse set of OTT applications, can produce positive socioeconomic outcomes that benefit both India and the US. As I welcome Minister Thakur for his fireside chat, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate the Walt Disney Company's commitment to work along with you on policy and regulatory reforms to promote India's creative economy, as our company has long and historical connection with India, and we see ourselves as proud partners to help make India a global media and entertainment hub. I know Sanjay Gupta knows Disney well, having worked as an executive at Star India for over 10 years, and now at Google shares this vision to promote India's creative economy at the global level. So take it away, Sanjay. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening and good morning to all our guests. And good evening, Anurag ji. It's a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation with you today. First, congratulations to you on your new responsibilities. Both INB and sports really do touch every Indian almost every day, many times a day. You and your team work tirelessly in both these ministries to keep billions of us informed credibly every day, but above all, the stories that get told through this medium, be it in films or drama or sports or news, really inspire us. So thank you for steering a set of ministries. It inspires billions of Indians every day. Let me start by asking you your thoughts as the INB minister. The outbreak of pandemic has really been tough for all of us, both for lives and livelihoods. The industries also were hit badly. And media and entertainment is no exception to that. But having said that, the significance of this sector has been underlined more than ever during this time, as people have turned to more in home entertainment in these months. There are many more screens where people are watching stories in India, be it movies or sports or drama. Recent studies also reveal that this sector is stated to generate more than 8 million jobs by 2025. Given the opportunities and challenges both, we'd be keen to hear thoughts, uh, Anuragji, about your priorities for Information and Broadcasting Ministry.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you for inviting me to address the members of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. When Mukesh Agiji and I met a couple of weeks ago, we agreed that there was a huge potential for collaboration and opportunities in India. And since many of you follow India closely, you would have seen the historic reforms undertaken by Modi government, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. You would have also seen a paradigm shift in how government functions and responds. India is open for business, and in every sector, there are opportunities and possibilities. I will share some of the sectors going forward in our conversation today. But more importantly, I look forward to hearing from you and your members the new ideas which lead to innovative solutions. New India is all about fueling the next big idea, the next big collaboration, and the next big solution that makes our lives better and improves the livelihoods of our people. And as you know, and you touched upon during your opening remarks, that sports is a great enabler, whereas it touches millions of Indian youth. At the same time, millions of them who are watching them online or on TV. On the other hand, the Information Broadcasting Ministry also plays the nodal role of dissemination of information about the various policies, initiatives, and schemes of the government to the citizens. And even during the pandemic, as you rightly said, on one hand, there was a lot of responsibility to spread the right information among the people. On the other hand, there was a huge challenge to counter the misinformation or the false narrative or the maybe false propaganda. So as a citizen, as a minister, that was also a challenge. On one hand, how to counter that. On the other hand, it was a challenge how to reach out to the masses into the nook and corner of India and to spread the right information. And my focus as a minister is on citizen-centric communication in a very synchronized and transparent and real-time manner across media and social media landscape in the country. And let me say this, that our focus is also to ensure communication to the last mile in various regional languages. As you know that it is not like other countries that you have one language. Here you have many languages and hundred of dialects as well. So that's a challenge. So I think it is very important to communicate in different languages into the different regions. Modi government firmly believes that the right information empowers citizens to make the right decisions. And this is only amplify the various social and financial empowerment in initiatives that we have already taken. And as I said, tackling fake news is a big challenge. From the ice age, millions of years ago, we are in the infodemic age today. And the pandemic situation has aggravated this issue the world over. I was addressing couple of days back at another international forum, and I could hear it from various other stakeholders that how they have been facing the same challenges across the globe. So the government of India has responded to the challenges of fake news and fake narratives through swift and clear communication based on science and facts during this pandemic period. And there are many other issues which I can discuss with you, but let me leave it to you so that if you have any other questions, I can respond to that. India is celebrating the 75th years of independence, which we are calling Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So what we have achieved in the last 75 years, how the journey has been so far, and how we can project where India aims to be in the 100th year when we will be celebrating our centenary celebrations. So it could be the sharing of success stories of India abroad as an information broadcasting minister. You know, when I used to travel to US way back in 1997, when I first visited the Chicago for my trade fair at McCormick Place, Chicago. That was in the month of August when I read the newspaper. It was during the India's Independence Day. They used to call India as a country of snake charmers and beggars. We are no longer the land of snake charmers. We are the land of laptops, billion-dollar unicorns, a marketplace that every global brand wishes to enter. We are a young and growing skilled workforce, and we are a democratic nation driven by the aspiration of a billion. And with that comes demand. And India's marketplace is both offline and online. And this is a saying now, if it works in India, it will work anywhere in the world. And that's true. Your business may be in tech or any other areas. So here is the opportunity. So I invite all of you. You can look at various opportunities, whether it is in the online stream or offline, in the sports or into the education or in the media and entertainment, which is the growing sector now.
Thank you, Anuragji. Those are really, really powerful thoughts. At Google also, we have learned that when we solve for India, we solve for the world. And actually, that's one of the learning that we have carried as we invested time and money to build Google Pay, which are now rolling out globally after being very successful in India. So let me move gears and ask you about that India is the land of storytellers, where we have told the biggest stories of the world in Mahabharata or Ramayana. And now today we have across languages some of the most powerful storytellers of the world here, be it our writers, directors, cameramen, editors. Equally, as you rightly said, we have some of the best technology people shaping the digital ecosystem for the world actually from India at this point of time. With everything going digital, our stories can travel to every part of the world, every corner of the world. Equally, India has emerged as a popular destination for foreign producers to shoot content in. So I have two questions for you. How do you plan to support and grow the creative industries, both traditional and emerging? And how can we attract more foreign producers to take advantage of Indian locations and equally Indian talent?
Sanjay, you have been associated with this field earlier in your earlier role also, and when you were part of that role, you have been successfully covering the most popular cricket leagues of the country. I mean, globally, that was one of the most popular leagues. And I think you have asked a very important question, and one of our focus areas. India being the largest producer of feature films across the world, has been a global leader in the traditional creative sector. India has also the second largest pay TV market in the world in terms of subscribers and growing at the rate of 7.5% year-on-year basis. And our ministry is supporting the generation of creative content to facilitate ease of doing business, building capacity through skill development, and creating the last mile market, whether it is through the National Film Development Corporation or the film division, or whether it is the promotion of the creative content through the participation in the international film festivals abroad, and also our very own promotion of content through holding the film festival in India, which is the International Film Festival of India, as well as the BRICS Film Festival. And if you are a film buff and keeping an eye on the IFFI this year, you should have, you should track that. There will be new aspects and opportunities that will interest you. And let me also share that just a few days ago, I personally inaugurated the Himalayan Film Festival. That was the first edition, which covered the films from 12 Himalayan states. On the International Film Festival, that will be a bigger platform from not only from the India, but the film from overseas will also be displayed and a platform could be given. So there are a lot of opportunities. If you see, in India, as you said, that India is a land of storytellers, and our tales have captured the imagination of the world. Modi government is determined to make India the content subcontinent of the world. And we are already doing world-class post-production for films around the world. We already have the film facilitation office, and the film and the entertainment industry has a huge employment opportunities here in India. And for the global players also, it could be very competitive and it could be technology driven also. So not only the post-production element could come here, but the shooting could also happen here, where many states are coming forward to encourage the film shooting in the states. So we have also taken a lot of steps to support, connect, and promote this aspect. And one of them includes recognition of creativity through the National Film Awards. We also promote exchange of content with other countries through audio, video, co-production agreements, and our film training institutes, FTII and SRFTI, run regular as well as short-term courses for the skill upgradation in films and the TV sector. In fact, 100% FDI is allowed in the film sector now. So there is huge opportunity, as I earlier said, that new platforms, like the new areas, OTT, animation, VFX, gaming and comics, which we generally call the ABGC sector. India is currently the world's fastest growing OTT streaming market and is likely to grow at an estimated rate of, say, about 28.6% in the next 4 years. So there is a huge opportunity here. Apart from that, to support the emerging AVCG sector, there is a need to build an ecosystem of the skilled workforce. And as a government, we are developing an Institute of Excellence and Center of Excellence for animation, visual effects, gaming, and comic. So I think there is huge opportunities in these two areas, traditional as well as the new platforms, OTT, gaming, or the visual effects. So I think post-COVID, there are huge possibilities for the use of technology, and pre-COVID, 11 production from US sought permission to film in India. And I'm sure we could see a lot of people coming back to India post-COVID, as some of the notable US projects that filmed in India in the last few years were Tenant, White Tiger, The Bear, Extraction, and Skater Girl, etc. So I see a huge opportunity, I think, but the issue is how we can join hands, as Prime Minister Modi rightly, while during his visit to US, has mentioned about people-to-people contact, government-to-government contact, and corporate-to-corporate contact. So I think there's a huge opportunity in this sector of media and entertainment.
Thank you. That is very, very powerful plans. And I do think I'm excited about the idea, as you had said, having worked in this sector deeply for more than a decade, that India could potentially become the cultural capital of the world. Let me switch gears now and talk about sports, something which is very close to your heart. You have been a former sports person and administrator yourself. And Tokyo has really inspired all of us, both in Olympics and Paralympics. We produced the richest ever haul in the history of this country with 7 and 19 medals respectively, our best ever. So I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts around what drove the success in the Olympics this time? And what will be your thoughts on evolving sports, given your sports experience in India as we move forward?
See, because of shortage of time with you, let me keep it very precise that our strategy was on the target Olympic podium scheme, where we've identified the elite athletes and trained them globally and locally, and also looked after their needs from boarding, lodging to the training. All those expenses have been taken care of by the government of India. And where the Prime Minister himself was so involved, even before the departure of the athletes, speaking to them personally and to their families as well, building their morale and uplifting their spirits and not putting pressure on them. When they came back with the medals, he himself called them over a cup of tea, but spent more than 2.5 hours with Paralympians and Olympians both. So that clearly shows when from the top, if you have that kind of involvement with the athletes, the country is bound to do well. So what we are going to do now is to focus more on the scientific side, a better coaching facilities here and better infrastructure, but also at the same time, we are asking corporates to come forward and adopt one game. We are asking states to pick 1 to 3 games so that they should focus on those 1 or 3 games so that we can win more medals in the coming times, whether it is Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, or the Olympics Games in 2024 or 2028. So it was catering to each athlete, whether they're injured, then they have been sent abroad or locally and have been taken care well by the physiotherapist, psychologist, and even the biomechanic. So we have actually worked from one athlete to another athlete very in person. One request I have to make here is I would like to seek your suggestion and your help to tie up with your top institutes in US so that we can train our athletes here as well in partnership with the US, either universities or such institutes. And apart than that, how corporates can also adopt one game so that we can train them well for the future events. As we have seen in US, 127 medals were won by the universities. Here in India, that is not the case. What we can do in that regard, that is one of my requests to you. And the second is on the media and entertainment side, how we can join hands and India could become the content subcontinent of the world.
Thank you. I really powerful. I do think, as you rightly say, we need to take sports to every child in this country. They should participate, play, and therefore get inspired. And that brings me to the last question, given the time that we have right now. In my earlier role as star in Disney as well, we are involved in bringing sports to every household in this country. But when we look at and go deeper, we realize that one of the biggest challenges has been access to sports, both in terms of playing or even viewing and experiencing. Now, technology is playing, as you earlier said, a very important role in our lives in changing the way we consume sports and the way we play sports as well. Now, keeping that in mind, what would be your thoughts on how do you want technology companies or startups in this country to enable and to reduce this big limitation that we have for our children to access sports and enjoy sports in this country?
I think digital is here to stay. And in every field of life, we have seen that during the pandemic also, it was the virtual conferences which has helped. It is through the use of technology we could deliver better. And I think it is but natural that it will make its way into sports as well. However, having said that, sports is traditionally viewed as an on-field activity, but with the times that is changing because the younger generation is more attuned to pursuing hobbies, education, and even the social interaction on the digital platforms now. And e-support will also gain popularity in time. Health and fitness have a direct impact on GDP, and that can't be ignored either. And technology-aided training can be a good way to improve the quality of training that we impart. And I've seen that change. I also see technology as an enabler. And for an athlete to able to compare his or her performance vis-a-vis other athletes in other countries, to be able to use technology along with the sports science to plan their training, these could be great contributions. So I personally feel technology is a great enabler, as we have recently launched the Fit India mobile app. It also, this Fit India app also gives you the fitness score. So yes, there are immense opportunities to collaborate, whether for the Fit India mobile app or other fitness regimes, or for the sports, or bringing more competitiveness into the sports. And I personally feel there are huge areas to join hands and work. Indian IT software capabilities is known to the world. but we want to use that in the sports as well. And I think we can learn from your experiences from the US, and somewhere we can partner to train our athletes to that level. And
Thank you.
few
Thank you
areas
very
where you
much for
can
your.
grow new games. There are new areas for to grow. You have seen it successfully happening in cricket, where Disney Star used to broadcast that in a big way, and that online application of your Hotstar app did extremely well during that time. Also, millions of people used to see that. So I personally feel technology is going to play a very big role in the coming times, and I'm sure these games could be made more popular with the use of technology, more viewership, a larger contribution to bring more people into the sports, not only for entertainment, but also for their participation as well as a player.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Anuragji. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I think these are really powerful things. And I do think both as technology companies and media and entertainment companies, we are really keen to partner deeply to ensure that we inspire 1 billion Indians through the power of sports every day. So thank you for your thoughts and really energized by the ideas that you shared with us.
Thank you, Sanjay. Grateful. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the US ISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome the Chairman of the US ISPF Board of Directors, Mr. John Chambers, to introduce our next session, a conversation with the Honorable Minister Chandrasekhar.
Good afternoon to everyone around the world. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm introducing one of the top ministers in India who, if I were to pick a job to be somebody's wingman, this would be the job I'd want to have. Rajiv Shandeshikar is Minister of Electronics and Information Technology, but he's also Minister of Skills Development and Entrepreneurism. I want to congratulate you, Rajiv, on your new role. You're known as an amazing, dynamic leader, both in government and business, and somebody who's not hesitant to dive into issues once you know and understand them. When you think about the Prime Minister's vision of a digital India, a startup India, a inclusive India, a manufacturing India, really your 4 key function groups that you're focused on bring all those to life. It's unusual where you find somebody who's not only a very good, effective political leader, but also a large business leader and a startup leader. You understand the technology. You clearly understand the businesses and what really makes it go. How do you do job creation out of startups? And how does government and business work together in a often challenging way to make it much easier for both sides to achieve their career goals? I had a chance to talk to your brother-in-law this morning, Neal, and I have 2 brother-in-laws. If they would have said half as many nice things about me as your brother-in-law did about you, it's really a neat world. But Neal and I have worked together for decades. He could not have been more complimentary about you. When you think about India's future, you catch key new technology waves, areas such as artificial intelligence, which I think will be as powerful as the cloud and the internet, 5G, semiconductor ecosystem that we're all understanding how that's going to play differently, and a huge opportunity for India's future in high-tech electronics and manufacturing. And then how do you take your startup engine, which is up to 50 unicorns now, literally accomplishing more in this year in terms of unicorn status than in all the years that went before. So it's an honor for US ISPF to work with you. We want to earn your trust and confidence, and it's an honor to have you on the session today. Rajiv, thank you very much for being here. I want to introduce the moderator for this session, Neal Mohan. Neal, you are a part of Google, but you also did DoubleClick, a very successful startup, and have been with Google for the last 10 plus years, like anybody else on US ISPF that would span the skill sets that Rajiv have. And I look forward to you guys having a very interactive session. Rajiv, thank you once again for being part.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Minister. First of all, I want to start off by congratulating you on your recent appointment. As John said, it's really fantastic to have a technologist and entrepreneur lead this ministry. And we at Google and YouTube look forward to working with you in the ministry on the Digital India program. It's really fantastic. And one of the things that I want to say is that the ministry has really staked its reputation on investing in people, investing in technology, recognizing the power of technology and the impact that it can have on improving people's socioeconomic status, not just in India, but really setting an example for the world. And so I want to applaud you for all of that as well. I think this conversation is extremely timely given Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to the US and the UN, the Quad Summit, and just the evolving geopolitics in the region. And what I'd like to do is start off with something that is impacting not just the region, but the entire world. It's something that's top of mind, I think, for all of us, which is the global pandemic that we're all living through, the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, it's had a huge impact on all of our lives in terms of how we live them online, consuming information, commerce, etc. Of course, it's had a really big impact on the overall digital ecosystem in India, as well as the Digital India vision. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how that's playing out.
So thank you, Neal. Thank you, John, for the introduction. Thank you for USISP for having me this evening. Look, I think I speak from an Indian perspective, and I don't think it's very dissimilar from what most of the world has experienced during the last 18, 19 months, which is that we've just gone through the most difficult period in terms of not just the pandemic and the disease and the health challenges, but the deep impact it's had on lives, livelihoods, and the overall economic impact it's had on an economy that was, in our case, an economy that was just beginning to really ratchet up and take off after years of cleaning that the Prime Minister had to undertake from 2014. And having said that, we went through obviously one quarter of a sharp contraction, which is the lockdown quarter of April, May, June of 2020, where the economy shrunk by almost a fourth, to about 23.9%. And it was necessary by that time for us to build the capacities and the capabilities to fight this disease. But the interesting thing looking back at hindsight, I can characterize this as being interesting, but it was obviously difficult in those early days, has been the resilience and the robustness with which the economy has bounced back. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the investments in Digital India that the Prime Minister made in the early years of his administration and embedding technology into governance really helped tremendously during the pandemic in terms of how the government could reach out to the remotest families and deliver not just monies, but also food kits and rations all around the country. We had at one point about 800 million people being fed by the government directly and being targeted directly. Money in terms of subsidies and stipends were being given out. And the work for wages programs were being increased for migrants that were going back. So in a lot of ways, I don't want to take away from obviously the successes in healthcare and all of what we did in that space, but digital and the technology investments that were made in government governance and generally overall in society and communities across the country really has helped the country bounce back. And Neal, and I'm sure that one of the sectors in the Indian economy that are just going galloping has been the tech space. And apart from the short-term setbacks in the first 2 quarters of the pandemic, the tech space has really taken off. And for a lot of people, there has been a reset of ambitions and they look to the post-COVID world as a world full of opportunities in digitization and all of those other things that are now looking like real opportunities to pursue.
No, I completely agree with what you said, and it's been remarkable to observe that, Minister, over the last a year or so. And as you know, at YouTube, we've tried to play our role, working in concert not just with your ministry, but the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, to make sure that reliable and accurate information was available to all citizens across the country. Billions and billions of information panels and playlists and things that would give a high quality information about how to get vaccinated. The vaccine drive in India has been, nothing short of remarkable. How to get healthcare, et cetera. And so we look forward to continuing to do that as the country and the world emerge from the pandemic. Building on what you said towards the end there. There's obviously the pandemic. There's also just the changing geopolitical environment in the Asia Pacific region. That, of course, is going to have an impact on the existing U.S.-India ICT trade relationships, how that plays out. I'm assuming from your perspective, there's lots of opportunities as well as challenges. So if you could talk a little bit about how you see that relationship changing as a result of everything that's happening in the region, and also just the movement towards more open and collaborative data systems. We've talked about things like intellectual property, privacy, et cetera, in the past. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
Look, without getting into the trade conversation directly, Neal, look, I see this in rather simplistic terms. I think, and I've said this pre-COVID in the context of conversations around the Quad when I was not a minister, but I was a member of parliament. I've said that the future of technology has to be, in a sense, not left to, some sort of dynamic that is out there, driven only by entrepreneurs and driven by entrepreneurs and investors. It has to be in a very proactive manner by the four democracies of the Quad, India, US, Australia, Japan, and any other country that thinks along those same lines or have open communities and open societies. They have to play a much more proactive role in shaping the future of technology, shaping the future of where the internet goes, how the internet develops and how the internet remains open, but safe and trusted. And I have maintained this line for many, many years, and I continue to hold that position even today, post-COVID. So I think at the heart and at the front and center of the conversation, Neal, I believe that there is a political need for political understanding between these 4 or 5 countries in terms of the future of technology. And I say this because in 2010, for example, I don't know if you recall, there was an attempt by some countries to move the regulation of the internet or the management of the internet from ICANN to the United Nations. I don't know if you remember that. And it was led by a country to the north of us. And there was quite a bit of debate about whether India should join that movement. And I was a member of parliament at that time, and I opposed it tooth and nail. So there are many of these things that, looking forward, countries like India, US will have to work together, both at the political level and at the business and entrepreneurial level. Having said that, I think the point you make is that as today the reality of the power of the internet and e-commerce and all of them play itself out in India, there is clearly emerging needs for dialogues on data protection, cross-border data flow. What kind of construct do we have which does not take us back into these islands on the internet rather than what was envisaged of the internet many, many years ago. So I think there is a need for that type of a conversation to really start in a formal way, Neal. And I've said this earlier, and I say this again today. In terms of where jurisprudence and the legislative and the legal framework and the ecosystem of sort of bilateral understandings between countries like the US and India will go, I think we are all currently today as countries at different levels of understanding and evolution or maturity, if you want to call it that, in terms of how we see the internet and how we see the future of technology. And I think part of this thing of dialoguing between the countries is to arrive at some steady state global understanding of what the role of government should be, what the role of regulators should be in terms of regulating intermediaries on the internet, in terms of responding to user harm, what should be the protocol. I see the risk, a real risk, that if countries don't talk about this in whatever forum, bilaterally, and arrive at some understanding, that we create these little islands of very, very differential rules and regulations that either create opportunities for arbitrage or then have one set of consumers disadvantaged over the other set of consumers.
No, that's thank you for all of that. I mean, I think the last point you hit on there is something near and dear to my heart. Certainly at YouTube, my number one priority is to live up to our responsibility as a global platform. What you highlight in terms of data flows and protecting consumers, not just in India or the U.S. but all over the world, is a top priority. And in terms of the vibrant ecosystem, the numbers really speak for themselves. I mean, I was reading over 600 deals, $11 billion worth of investment in the country around technology. As you point out, I think it's amazing. At Google, we're trying to do our part around the $10 billion Google for India Digitization Fund over the next 5 to 7 years, which of course we look forward to working with you on as well. I know another area that's near and dear to your heart, because you've spoken about this publicly many times, is skilling. And even before the pandemic, India was a hub of human capital, intellectual capital, skills, talent for the entire world. And of course, COVID has impacted that many times in ways to accelerate that trend, but also in terms of challenges such as worker migration, supply and demand imbalances, etc. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what role technology and the government can play in terms of skilling as the world emerges from the pandemic and in the years ahead.
Absolutely. As much as I'm passionate about technology, and I've spent all my life in technology, this responsibility of skilling and entrepreneurship really for me is, I hate to say this, it's even more exciting than being part of the technology ministry. And the vision that our Prime Minister laid out in 2015 is really, really, really inspirational for somebody like me. In that today, when I travel around the country, I can see, I meet so many youngsters who consider skilling as a really, truly aspirational ladder to, opportunities and growth in life. Whereas if you just flash back to 10 years ago or 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago before 2014, for most children in India, there was just really one runway. You went to school, you did your high school, and then if you were capable financially or temperamentally to do it, you went into higher education. And if you couldn't do that, you just dropped out and then looked for something to do. And over the last 7 years, we have built now this real tremendous framework where children can start skilling and choose either one of those three options for life in terms of life choices. You can go down the higher education route, which you and I have done, and most traditional Indians have done over the last several decades. But you now have the opportunity of just saying, fine, I don't want to do higher education. I'd skill myself. I'd do coding. I would do artisan. I do handicrafts. Whatever. I have 4,000 plus skilling programs that the government of India has put together that are being run by a network of almost 20,000 training centers around the world, around the country. And kids are just, quite happy to do that. And in all of my travels around the country, I am really, really, woken up to the fact that there is a real aspirational generation that has been built on the back of this program of skilling that the Prime Minister launched in 2015. Having said that, let me say this. that there are many challenges in terms of how we take skilling in the post-COVID world. And you hit the nail on the head. During COVID, skilling took a, there was a big break put on the progress on skilling. And we have quickly moved to a model of blended skilling, where there's a significant amount of digital sort of content that is being driven. But there are many skilling programs that just require real life labs and workshops and things like that. But a large amount of the coursework is migrating to digital. And with the new education policy that the government has announced a year ago, skilling and education sort of get integrated. And there is a roadmap now for a digital education and skilling platform that the government of India is building and will launch very shortly, which will just take this to the next level in terms of access for 1.3 billion Indians to skilling and education programs around the country. So I'm particularly excited about where we are. On the 15th of July, just a week after I took over, the Prime Minister gave us a direction that we need a new approach in the post-COVID world. The ministry and the team here have quickly worked on redesigning and reimagining skilling, and we believe that we know where we want to go with that. And I'll just add one last point, Neal, which is that it is clear today for the technology sector, for example, that we are struggling with the demand-supply gap that has suddenly hit this industry, hit the tech sector in the last 1 year. And there is a huge gap that is developed as a demand for almost 1 million new engineers and coders and developers in the tech space that we see in the next up to 2022. That is frantically being met, by lateral hires, upskilling, training, and all of that. So there is currently a little bit of a crisis of shortage, which is partly self-imposed by the industry for not maybe planning it enough, partly by the fact that the post-COVID world has thrown up this huge opportunity that nobody saw coming. So I think it's a good problem to have, not necessarily a good problem to continue to have.
Thank you for that, and the vision, the Prime Minister's vision, and yours is incredibly inspiring. There, as I was preparing for this conversation, I found that just on our platform on YouTube, the amount of people researching and watching video content around careers and skills has grown 60% year on year, just in the last year. Obviously, some of that was COVID, but a lot of it is exactly what you said, which is using digital platforms all over the country to improve yourself, make your life better for your sake and your family's sake. Another related area is the creative economy, and obviously India for hundreds and thousands of years has been a bastion of cultural capital. How do you see digital platforms, the technology industry at large, playing a role in terms of the creative economy, in terms of projecting cultural capital throughout the country, but all over the world, and also creating economic opportunities, as you talked about, for creative types all over India?
Oh, no, look, I think, Neal, I think you know this even more than I do, that the digital and technology have completely upturned the conventional creative models, creative industries in India. There was a lock on all of these things for many decades by a few companies and a few creative names, and digital just turned the whole thing on its head. And today we have creative content being put out there by really new faces, new names that are just. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So no, I think there's absolutely no doubt on the fact that digital technology, the internet, and the connectivity that all of this, and now devices that are being that are inexpensive, and the increasing internet penetration of over 800 million plus that we have in India is really upturned the entire creative space, and it is created a new wave of in terms of innovation and creativity, the likes of which we've never seen. At least I have never seen in my lifetime in India this kind of creative explosion. And I just wanted to make another point linked to the earlier question, Neal, which is about how even in the remotest parts of India today, students and youngsters walk up to me in these meetings that we have and these chats that we have, and they say, look, why don't you take skilling onto YouTube? Or why don't you take it onto some of these platforms where we can, download it? Because we are actually learning a lot of these skills by going to YouTube and some of these open platforms. So, there is a significant behavioral change that a lot of which the government is playing catch up with. And you would think that we're all, geniuses sitting down here in Delhi and we figured out what the next 2-3 years is going to be. And I can assure you that digital is making everybody in government and everybody that is engaged with consumers and citizens really play catch up. We are really reinventing our models, whether they're in skilling or creativity or producing content. I caught a little bit of what Anurag was saying in the previous session. And this is a fact that the disruption is deep, the disruption is permanent. And I think this is the new normal, that technology is creating new heroes every day, whether they're unicorns in the tech space or they are, content creators in the creative space.
Yeah, no, that is truly amazing. And I think the fact that you have the insight that it is, the people and the citizens that really lead the way is I think really bodes well for the future. I know we need to wrap up here, but it's amazing. Even on our platform, we have 140 creators in India that have over 10 million subscribers, which is truly amazing. The power of this creative economy and what it can do for everybody. I want to thank you, Minister, for making the time. I look forward to working with you and your ministry on all of these efforts. And I think sort of the key theme really that emerges is the combination of people and technology to really move the ball forward on behalf of people's lives, but really set an inspiration for the world. Best of luck in all of those endeavors. And I want to also thank the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum for having me and allowing for this conversation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Neal, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the USISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome our President and CEO, Dr. Mukesh Aghi, to launch the USISPF Global Leadership Awards ceremony.
Thank you all for joining us for the second day of USISPF 4th Annual Summit. It is an honor to be here today to recognize 3 leaders who were instrumental in leading the corporate community in its response to India's devastating second wave of pandemic earlier this year. Our theme this year is looking ahead, strengthening resilience, expanding prosperity, and these 3 leaders have done just that in their response to the pandemic. When the second wave hit India, they didn't pause. Instead, they took immediate action to come together and devise a way to help India during its time of need. Chandrasekhar, chairman of Tata Sons, led Tata in procuring medical equipment from other domestic and international sources. Tata Sons procured and distributed 1,300 ventilators, over 11,250 oxygen concentrators, and tons of medical supplies. They committed over 1,000 crore, which is approximately over $135 million expenditure to COVID-19 response and related activities. Puneet Ranjan, Deloitte Global CEO, led Deloitte efforts in donating oxygen concentrators to the Indian Red Cross and initiating an innovative program called Sanjeevani Pariyojana, the Life Project, to expand the hospital ward, helping patients with mild to moderate COVID-19 recover at home so hospitals can be freed up to treat the most critically ill. And Raj Subramaniam, President and CEO of Fedex, helped lead the donation of 3 Boeing 777F charter flights of oxygen concentrator, PPE, and other critical supplies to India in May and June 2021. Under Raj's leadership, FedEx charters flew into Mumbai and New Delhi. In all, FedEx moved more than 50,000 oxygen concentrator to India in collaboration with nonprofit partners and customers. We are so grateful to have these 3 leaders as part of our community, and we're incredibly thankful for all they did to help save lives and contribute critical medical supplies during these challenging times for us all. We know we're not out of the woods yet. With the ongoing pandemic, we are stronger today because of the challenges we have had to face and overcome. And our 2 nations have grown closer by engaging in critical aid efforts from both sides to help one another out during our respective time of difficulty. So thank you to Chandra, Punit, and Raj for your heroic effort. And we are so grateful to have you with us today to honor you with the 2021 USISPF Global Leadership Award. Before I bring in John, we'd like to play a small video in regards to the COVID relief effort. Thank you.
I have 50,000 professionals that call India home, and we had about 6% of them that contracted COVID. And so we are working to protect them, to support them, and this is deeply personal. What we need to do is stop the crush on the hospital system and stop the panic. And that's why we announced with the government of Haryana, where I come from, an effort that we call Expand the Hospital Ward. And the intent there is to try and take care out to the homes, to the rural areas, and provide care to people so that they don't come crushing the hospital system.
The model that we created in India is something that can be replicable not just across India, but it can be replicable across other countries as well.
I'm Raj Subramaniam, President and COO of Fedex. It is our mission to deliver relief to communities in need around the world throughout this pandemic. Since the start of this pandemic, Fedex has utilized our global network to transport nearly 90 kilotons of personal protective equipment, including more than 2.2 billion masks worldwide. We have worked collaboratively with the Indian and US governments, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, and many other businesses and non-profit organizations to ensure a streamlined process in the delivery of aid.
Thank you. Now, please welcome the USISPF Board Chairman, Mr. John Chambers, to introduce the awardees with Dr. Aghi.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think it's so important to recognize people who go way beyond and role models for us all. When we originally outlined what the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum could do, we said it can enable the most strategic relationship in the world between the two great democracies and be the role model for others. We also said it isn't about business trade or just innovation or job creation. It's about, can we change the lives of every citizen in all 20 in India and the 8 territories and the 50 states in the U.S.? And could we really do this as a business organization working closely with government and the citizens? Many people thought that was perhaps a stretch too far. But Mukesh, I think what you've done in terms of the leadership, you and Gaurav, you brought us together in a way that has allowed that to occur. Today's recognition of the 3 award winners, Chandra, Puneet, Raj, isn't that? And thank you for letting us hold you up as our heroes. Because business can move with speed and scale and production that candidly government's not designed for. But because of the trust that exists among the members of the forum and also the trust with government, it allowed us to move at that speed. So thank you for letting us use you as an example and role models for all of us. You are truly our heroes. Chandra, I want to start with you first. You're amazing. In just one word, Chandra. Everybody in India knows what that means. They know what Tata means, how good of an organization you are. And the way that you brought your organization and coordinated with other groups was amazing, and how you got your employees to contribute as well. So you are our first award recipient. If you'll come virtually on the stage and allow Mukesh and I to present the award to you, it'd be our honor. You're looking good, young man, and thank you. And I'd love to have your comments, if you would, at this time.
Thank you, Mukesh, and thank you, John, for the kind introduction. I am privileged and honored to accept the USISPF Global Leadership Award this year on behalf of all my colleagues at the Tata Group. I would like to thank the USISPF for its remarkable leadership in providing a strong response to the pandemic. I would also like to compliment my fellow award recipients, Puneet and Raj, for their contributions to the pandemic. Last 18 months has been a dramatic period in a way we have not experienced before. On the one hand, we have collectively faced overwhelming challenges and hardships. The human toll alone is difficult to accept. On the other, we have responded to these challenges with astonishing heroism and resilience at multiple levels, as individuals, as a collective, as corporations, as institutions, and as governments. This award is a testament to the tireless efforts of hundreds of thousands of my colleagues at the Tata Group who have been working on the COVID front lines. They were key to our national and community pandemic response, enabling us to devote more than $200 million to efforts that we executed on the ground, from building hospitals, procuring medical devices, generating and distributing oxygens, and providing accommodation, and also a number of other activities in the communities we serve. I'm immensely proud we have been able to live up to the founding principles of the Tata Group, which is to place the community at the heart of our business. I also want to take this opportunity to personally thank Mr. Ratan Tata for his strong and unwavering leadership in our COVID response. One word about the future. As vaccination rates increase the world over, we are cautiously but optimistically looking towards the beginning of the end of the pandemic. And while much of the change we have experienced has been challenging, it is also a time of unprecedented opportunity. In particular, I believe the US-India relationship, bolstered by each country helping the other during this trying time, is ready to scale new heights. The rebalancing of the global supply chains, transition to a sustainable future, the dramatic acceleration in digital, and the future investments that are necessary in healthcare, and education provide huge opportunities for both countries to work constructively together to make the world a better place. Thank you once again for this recognition, and thank you all for listening.
Chandra, thank you very, very much. Our first award recipient. The second is a very good friend, Puneet. You've done amazing things. Your company contributed on all fronts, from the oxygen concentrators to the financials, as Mukesh said. But you also provided something we needed as a team. The ability to do project management, managing all these pieces and helping us pull it all together. The ability to set us up with audit readiness, etc. You're kind of the glue that helped keep this together from that side. So Puneet, congratulations. You're my hero, as I said about Chandra, and I will say about Raj as well. And I think you're the role model for what companies and what business leaders should represent in society today. Puneet, welcome, congratulations, and on to you for your comments, sir.
Thank you, John, and really honored to be on the stage with Chandra and Raj. Congratulations to both of them. Their companies and them individually have done remarkable work. Also, congratulations to USISPF, and I'll comment on that in just a minute. But the work that Mukesh and Gaurav and all the people at USISPF did was absolutely remarkable. And I accept this award on behalf of the 345,000 professionals that called Deloitte home. 50,000 of them, as I said in the video, called not only Deloitte home, but India home. My 81-year-old mother still lives in Rohtak, so this was deeply personal. And I am really glad that we could make a small difference working with entities like Fedex and Tata and many other corporates from the United States. So really honored to be on this stage. Thank you so much for recognizing me and recognizing Deloitte. Just a short word on USISPF and Gaurav and Mukesh. I think they are awardees as well, because without them, this would not have been possible. In the early days, when the second wave, the devastating second wave hit India, we worked tirelessly. Gaurav, Mukesh, the entire USISPF team, and it is a small team that worked tirelessly to organize the oxygen response, and then, as you said, John, organize the broader response to stop the crush on hospitals. So they are winners in my mind, and along with Raj and Chandra, congratulations to them as well. Again, thank you very much on behalf of Deloitte for recognizing me and Deloitte.
Puneet, thank you once again for your leadership. And again, one more hero and an example for all of us in business. Raj, I don't know if you remember, but you communicated with me and you said, we've got to change. We've got to jump in and make a difference here. I think you recognized that from the very beginning. What you all did from Fedex and with your leadership was nothing short of logistic miracles, and how well you worked across so many different countries to bring in not just medical supplies and oxygen concentrators, but literally hundreds of millions of tons of supplies and pharmaceutical equipment for the pandemic. You pulled it all together in a way that I think makes us so proud. And you begin to see how companies within USISPF overlap and pull together toward a common goal. Raj, you're my hero. Would love to congratulate you one more time. And let me ask you to make some comments, if you would, please, sir.
Thank you, John. And I appreciate this honor. And let me say this on behalf of 560,000 Fedex team members who continue to deliver hope and life-saving medicine and relief to communities around the world. I'm really honored to accept this 2021 Global Leadership Award from the USISPF. And of course, I'm equally honored to be recognized alongside my great friends and collaborators, Chandra and Puneet, for their leadership in responding to the India's second COVID-19 wave. And let me also add what was said before by Puneet about the work that the US ISPF did, and specifically Mukesh and Gaurav. This could not have been possible without their tireless effort. And again, in my mind, they're as much as authorities as anybody else. Now, throughout this ongoing global health crisis, Team FedEx has moved the world forward, and I'm incredibly proud of the continued focus and efforts. There is a sense of mission here at FedEx that this is who we are and what we do, and we are leaving no stone unturned to assist in this mission. Since the very onset of COVID-19, the FedEx team has worked diligently to keep global supply chains and the world in motion. And as you said, we delivered more than 110 kilotons of personal protective equipment around the world, but we are also an integral part of the global vaccine supply chain, delivering to more than 50 countries. And ever since the pandemic began, we have delivered nearly 14,000 humanitarian aid shipments around the world. Specifically for India, we have worked with customers and nonprofit organizations to deliver more than 1,000 metric tons of medical supplies, and which includes the 3 donated Boeing 777 charter that you all talked about before, that was full of oxygen concentrators, PPEs, and other critical supplies as the second wave spread across the country. In all, we have moved more than 50,000 oxygen concentrators to India. But beyond these numbers are the team members who make this work possible. FedEx team members involved in COVID relief operations realize they are part of some of the most important work in our company's history. They go above and beyond to deliver for the global community, even in challenging times. I'm reminded of the example of Arish Khan, one of our customs clearance administrators in New Delhi, who received a genuine note of gratitude from a customer after working around the clock to prioritize the clearance of medicine for his wife's critical medical condition. I'm reminded of the urgent phone call that I received from an individual in the United States whose father was in desperate need of an oxygen concentrator in India and wanted to ship one from here. Time was of the essence, and our FedEx office team in the US quickly mobilized into action. And within a matter of hours on a Saturday evening, we had a seamless process in place for individuals to ship personal oxygen concentrators from all over the United States into India. So that's at the core of what we call our Purple Promise, to make every FedEx experience outstanding, to make the seemingly impossible possible. So while this award has my name on it, it really belongs to Team FedEx. Let me also take this minute to acknowledge the close collaboration with our healthcare customers, the governments, the NGOs worldwide throughout the pandemic to help move the world forward. And it's in the case of India Relief, again, I want to recognize the US business community for stepping up immensely this year with the coordinated relief efforts through US ISPF. It is indeed a true honor to be part of this mobilization, to lend the expertise of FedEx to the broader business community efforts to help India in a time of such urgent need. And given those strong ties and genuine friendships we already see in here between the US and Indian business communities, I would have expected nothing less. Again, I cannot overstate my thanks for the incredible work of my team members around the world as we made these shipments possible during a challenging time. We all know that the pandemic is not over until it's over everywhere, and we will continue to deliver aid when and where it's needed most. That is who we are and what we do here at FedEx. Thank you again for this great honor.
Raj, you are our role model, Puneet as well, and Chandra. Amazing. But you see a common theme when you talk to these 3 leaders. You see leaders who really care about society as well as business, who work together in teams and often take on goals that many people would consider unachievable. Before we jump together for a picture, I asked for some time now, and it's amazing how all 4 of us were thinking the same thoughts. Mukesh, Gaurav, it's amazing what you all did, and I think you should also be part of the Global Leadership Awards. How you pull the teams together and work literally around the clock. So for all of us, it's amazing what you've done leading US ISPF. We're so proud of you. Thank you especially, Mukesh and Gaurav and your entire team. Just extremely well done. With that, let's come together and get a group picture if we could. And Scott, we're going to throw it to you to pull us all up on the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for one moment while we take a virtual group photo with our awardees.
It's a good-looking group. Thank you for your leadership, everyone. All right, with that, Mukesh, I think you and I are sliding out, and you guys are going to continue for a panel. Thank you once again. So proud and nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, and congratulations once again to all of our awardees. Now, please welcome Mr. Nick Deegan, CEO of the Americas and U.S. Senior Partner at the Brunswick Group, to launch our panel discussion with the awardees.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Let's wait here a second. There we go. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Scott, and delighted to be with such an august group. I wanted to add my hearty congratulations to Chandra, Raj, and Puneet. It's been really remarkable to see what you all have accomplished, and just want to echo as well John's remarks about USISPF and what Gaurav and Mukesh have done. I'm Nikhil Diogan. I'm CEO of the Americas for Brunswick, and I've been also a board member of USISPF, and watching what this group has done in conjunction with its members has been nothing short of remarkable. I think I want to add my congratulations to what you have done, and just listening to all of your remarks, what strikes me most is the humility that you all show and how you really represent the best of the U.S.-India partnership. Because when that crisis came to pass, Raj, I thought you said it best when you said that there wasn't ever any doubt that this community would spring together with real dedication and action. So I don't want to spend the entire time talking about COVID, but I figure we should at least start there. And Raj, if I could start with you, there was a critical moment when the second wave really hit India, where the community really came together. I would, if you don't mind, just describing a little bit that moment, because I think it was quite remarkable to see the variety of people who came together.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And again, it's wonderful to see you, and also thank you very much for your kind remarks. You're 100% right. It was it was on a weekend, I remember very clearly, where a few of us kind of got together and said, we got to do something urgently here. And within a matter of 12, 24 hours on a Sunday afternoon, we had a Zoom conference call. I bet you it had, the CEOs of Fortune 50 companies ranged around, and they all readjusted their schedule to come on the call to mobilize the efforts. And so what struck me was the fact that the team convened so quickly. And then, in fact, the very next day, there was actually the similar kind of group met with the U.S. Secretary of State. Again, that really talks to the convening power of the USISPF, but it also tells you how important India is to the U.S. business community from a humanitarian perspective, from a business perspective. And I think that conversation helped really figure out a coordination process on what's important and how we go about that.
And it's funny, as we look ahead, and Puneet, I'd love to start this with you. I think all of us who've seen that partnership in action want to make sure we don't lose that momentum. We want to make sure we really continue with that same spirit. And Puneet, as you think about this, you've mentioned one of the things that struck you was the public-private nature of this, and how that's something that you hope will continue. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the next steps as we hopefully come out of COVID, as things hopefully start to go back to normal? Just talk a little bit about the power of that public-private partnership.
Well, I mean, COVID, stating the obvious, was devastating.
And we saw that in April and May at very personal levels. As I said, my mother got COVID at 81, so it was really personal for me. And I've got 50,000 professionals that call India home. 6% of them were with COVID. So it is our responsibility to make sure that they navigate through this. But what COVID also showed us were a couple of things. One, as Raj said, the importance of India and how multinational corporations, US domiciled corporations, view India so critically from an importance standpoint. And I think the response is testament to that. The second is some of these larger issues, like fighting the pandemic, require global responses that government by themselves can't address. The Sanjeevani Pariyojana example that Deloitte led with Haryana and now is doing it pan-India is one such example. And there are other issues like climate, for instance, that will require all of us working together, doing our part in a public-private way, in an ecosystem way, to address these issues. And it's not just getting through navigating the pandemic, climate, income inequality as an example, health equity. These are all issues that will require that joint response.
Chandra, coming to you next, as John said, there's no company more synonymous with Indian business success than Tata. And what you have done has been remarkable. And full disclosure, as the son of a former Tata executive, I'm so struck by it. And like Puneet, I just went back to visit my mother, and to see how the pride people have in what Tata has done and what Tata did during COVID has been remarkable. And I think if you could talk a little bit about, as you come out of COVID, what are some of the things you think will be more permanent and lasting changes, either in your business or in the business relationship with government? Because hopefully this results, like in every crisis, hopefully we see some things and we change for the better how we do things as well.
I think a couple of words on the spirit that we could witness. At the Tata Group, while at the group central level, we formed a core group of all the CEOs and started to drive the initiative. But what became very apparent is the DNA of the group, where everyone did the right thing, whether it is Tata Steel increasing the capacity from 200 metric tons to 1,100 metric tons, almost supplying 10% of the oxygen that was needed in the country, and importing lots of cryogenic tankers to be able to transport oxygen, or Indian hotels employees converting the hotels into COVID wards and risking their lives in serving the patients and the doctors. And you can give many examples. TCS taking the lead in vaccinating hundreds of thousands of employees and all their families across the country. I mean, there are so many examples you can give. I think what's important to me is the necessity and the shortage that we have of the public health infrastructure. That was so visible. And I hope that this has provided the momentum, and that will get addressed as a top national priority. And we look forward to playing our part in participating in making sure that the healthcare system nationwide gets addressed. And in terms of many other collaborative efforts that has happened between companies, nations. For example, none of us could have imagined a vaccine could have been tried, tested, and launched in 12 months. Normally, the trial will be 6-7 years. So how do we leverage this speed and agility for the entire needs of other types of healthcare treatments? And this is a very pivotal moment. And we should not miss that opportunity. And we could see how kids in the urban areas could learn, live and shop, and learn through digital means. And a lot of village kids, because for the lack of access to the infrastructure and to the digital devices lost almost 2 years of their education life. It is going to make a huge impact, and we're going to feel that. But we should make a resolve to fix that, to provide that kind of infrastructure that is necessary. Same thing is going to happen in global supply chains. We should create a resilient global supply chain. We should move from or change from just in time to just in case supply chains, so that the global system doesn't fail. We all face that problem. I don't want to take specific instances. We all faced issues in the supply chain, not only in terms of our economic activity and businesses and production, but also in procuring medical assistance during the pandemic. So whether it is digital, and also I could witness the effect of sustainability. In Panda Road in Bombay, I could hear the birds chirping in the morning, which I've never experienced before. We could see the sea from both ends of our balcony. And it clearly shows that these things can be fixed. I think we should use this opportunity to be able to address all of this.
That's a terrific point, Chandra. I sit here in Midtown Manhattan, and I've been coming every day into the office, and the birds chirping have been replaced by the trucks honking over here a great deal. You mentioned supply chain, and Raj, no one knows more about this than you do, and you in your excellent interview, which you and Puneet did with my former colleague Shireen yesterday, you talked a little bit about this, but can you just pick up on Chandra's point in terms of how you think, given what every day we're waking up with more headlines about supply chain difficulties, where do you see the silver lining there? Where do you see how people are operating? And then Puneet, I'd like you to weigh in a little bit after that, also talking about social value and business being a force for good, because I think you've written quite eloquently about that. So Raj, if I can start with you.
Yeah, sure. There's no question that currently the supply chains are clogged up, and essentially you can see it in the ocean side of the business. The number of ships that are waiting to unload in the ports are in the west coast of the United States, and is a classic example of that. So it's important to improve the resilience of supply chains, like Chandra was talking about. I would just add one other point, is it's also important to make the supply chains smarter. And I think the role of technology here is very, very important, as I think we can make the issue with making too much inventory in different places. Of course, the cost is going to go up, but I think technology plays a big role in making sure that we have smart supply chains, and also supply chains that are then more resilient. Let me also say a role here for India. I think there's a moment of opportunity here, as a lot of companies are looking to diversify their supply chains, and as much as possible, this is a great opportunity to manufacture in India for the global market, and to make sure that there is infrastructure in place, whether it is the hard infrastructure that everyone thinks about, but also the soft infrastructure, and remove some of the non-tariff barriers, for example, to make sure that the process can be very smooth. I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, when our 777 flights landed in Mumbai, they were unloaded and into the trucks in 45 minutes flat, and the customs clearance was paperless, and it was brilliant work. I think that's actually a benchmark for how things can operate even post-pandemic.
That's a great segue, Puneet. Before we talk a little about social value, because Raj raised this up, and I know Deloitte just did an excellent study about FDI in India. I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit, given what Raj was alluding to in terms of making sure that the ease of business with India continues to improve. What you see as the perception, and what the Deloitte research has found in terms of the perception of doing business in India, and steps one can take to improve?
Well, it was a comprehensive study that we just commissioned that looked at investors from the US, Japan, Singapore, the European Union. The interesting data was that even in the midst of a pandemic, the amount of FDI flowing into India was at record levels. That was one takeaway. The second takeaway was most of these investors were not only attracted to India as a place to manufacture for export, they were really attracted by the local market, which should be obvious, but was a really important takeaway. The third, and I can go on, I'm not going to spend all my time talking about the FDI study, but the third interesting takeaway was there was a real disconnect between what is happening on the ground, the example that Raj gave around digitization of the customs process, or the repealing of the tax law that was regressive, to the perception that exists, particularly in Japanese and Singaporean investors, about ease of doing business in India. And I think that needs to be addressed. Now, to your question about social good, I found it interesting in listening to the acceptance speeches for Chandra and Raj about the notion of purpose. And Deloitte is a purpose-led organization. Our purpose is certainly to create an impact for our clients, to develop the 350,000 people that call Deloitte home, but also to give back to the communities that we live and work in. And what happened in India is a very good example of not only doing the right thing because it is the right thing, but doing the right thing because it is the right business thing. Giving back in the way that Deloitte, Tata, Fedex, and many others did in this pandemic allowed us to live our purpose and convince the stakeholders that comprise our organizations that we are an entity that does good. I'll give you one tangible example. 86% of the 345,000 professionals at Deloitte are Gen Zs and millennials. Their number one issue is climate. I recruit about 50,000 individuals globally every year, and I speak at university campuses in the United States, in Europe, in India. Invariably, I'm asked, what does Deloitte do beyond its core profit motive? My point being, if we want to hire, retain, develop the very best individuals, which is certainly what makes Deloitte successful, what makes TCS successful, what makes FedEx successful, I must have a credible response around climate, around COVID-19. It is the right thing to do. It is the right business thing to do.
That's such a great response, Puneet. And I having worked with you closely, seeing that in action has been just remarkable. Chandra, if I could come to you, because we've had obviously a momentous couple of weeks with Prime Minister Modi meeting with President Biden for the first time at the UN. And Puneet was alluding to this a little bit in terms of as we, there have been issues around tariffs and taxation and a lot of hope given the recent decisions. Talk to us a little bit about what do you think these meetings at that high level with President Biden and Prime Minister Modi mean for greater cooperation and collaboration between the two countries, but also at a business level?
First of all, let me say that these meetings are historic and they make a significant impact because they set the tone. And US and India, all of us know, especially in business, we are natural partners and natural allies. While there may be a cooperation at the defense level and any other level, I think business level, in terms of the economic impact that we can make on each other, is just humongous. And these meetings set the tone because both leaders emphasize how both countries can work with each other. I truly believe that India can emerge, I think Raj alluded to this, as a very, very important player in the rebalancing of the new global supply chain. At the group, we are already building a telecom network solution stack, 4G, 5G and beyond. And we are investing in electronics across the board. And we are looking at a number of other areas. And there are other players who are doing that too. I think in the post-pandemic world, India and US can play a significant role in development of infrastructure in India, in the whole digital area, and defining the complex issues around data. And India has built some of leading world-class platforms like the Aadhaar, like the UID, and so on. They are examples, but many such more things can be done. I see a very big opportunity in education, very big opportunity in healthcare. These are digital platforms that will be linked to the physical things on the ground. So I think it's a very strong signal, and many things will happen, and we should be at least aspiring to increase our trade to $500 billion. There's a lot of work to do from where we are currently.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I know we're almost out of time. I just want to end with, as my old colleague used to say, a quick lightning round question. If you could each just give me in 10 seconds or less, what's the thing that gives you the most hope as we come out of this year? The next 2 years, as we emerge from this, that would be terrific. Raj, if I can start with you, and then go to Puneet, and then Chandra.
Well, we at FedEx are very bullish on India as we reinvent FedEx at the intersection of physical and digital, and India plays a huge role. As Chandra just said, we think the potential for trade between India and the United States is multi-fold from where it is today. So that gives me hope.
Puneet?
This is India's century.
Great. Thank you. Well said. Chandra,
I think the next 10 years is going to be a terrific place to do business is India.
Well, look, thanks all of you. And I can, as somebody who ran a TV network for 9 years, I know how important it is to end on time and not make Scott wait too much. So thank you very much for all of you. And once again, congratulations on such a well-deserved honor, and congrats to John and Mukesh and the team for really leading us through this momentous period. Thank you all. Scott, back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us for the USISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome USISPF Board Member Ambassador Frank Wisner to launch our next session, a conversation with BJP National Vice President Panda.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining this session. I can promise you is going to be very, very interesting. It's my pleasure to introduce today two people, both of whom I claim as friends. The first is Jay Panda. Jay is the National Vice President of the BJP, the spokesman of the party. He's a member of Parliament, been elected twice, served in the upper house as well. Jay comes to his current positions from a deep association with the United States. Jay attended university here. He's a Husky from Michigan Tech. Jay's an author in addition to his many other accomplishments, but I would speak to all of you. Jay's deep commitment to social issues in India, his concern for malnutrition, dealing with the plague of tobacco, and of dealing with the migrant labor problems that are current today in India. Jay, you will be introduced by Nelson Cunningham, also a very close friend. Nelson is with McClarty Associates. Nelson is a skilled attorney in addition to his current functions with McClarty, which he manages. He started as a federal prosecutor out of law school at Stanford and has served in the Senate on the Judiciary Committee before joining two successive administrations, Clinton and Obama, a key figure in the Democratic hierarchy. Nelson, let me turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you, Frank, for that good introduction. I will note that when I served on the Judiciary Committee, the chairman of the committee was a man named Joe Biden, who seems to have done fairly well for himself in the years since, although I can claim very little credit for his great success. But certainly his meeting in the last 2 weeks with Mr. Modi, I think set the table for what is going to be, I think, a very good discussion here with someone who I claim as a longtime friend, Jay Panda. And it was marvelous to be introduced by another longtime, both personal friend, but also friend of India, Frank Wisner. In preparation for this, I took a look at my records and realized that Mr. Panda and I first met in 2008. And in the past 13 years, we've met many times on both sides of the Atlantic. In the United States, we've met in India. We met on the margins of so many India-U.S. meetings. He is a founding member of the India-U.S. Parliamentary Foundation. It's the context in which we first met. And what I'd like to do today is to build our questions. We'll start big. We'll start on the U.S.-India relationship broadly, which you know so well. We'll talk perhaps about trade and commercial issues, which in the wake of the pandemic are so important. And then we can talk to some of the areas of domestic concern, which you're now focusing on in your role with the BJP. Delhi, Assam, the two states which you oversee. And then perhaps we'll have a few minutes left at the end for you can give us some political insights into how you see the future of U.S.-India, of Indian politics. But it is such a pleasure to see you, and I'm only sorry that we're not sitting on the same stage and having just come off a dinner or a lunch together. But it's marvelous to see you. Jay, you are one of the key founders of the India-U.S. parliamentary grouping. You've met so many times with American members of Congress. You've led delegations of Indian parliamentarians. How do you read U.S.-India relations in the wake of the meetings here in the United States over the last 2 weeks between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi?
Thank you, Nelson. It's a great pleasure to be here on stage with you and Ambassador Frank Wisner, both great friends that I've had the pleasure of working with relating to the India-US bilateral relationship, especially for all these years. I would summarize the status of the relationship today as going from strength to strength. As we've discussed many times over the past 2 decades, the US-India relationship has come together in a way that could not have been imagined even in the mid or late 90s. And this is a fundamental underlying development. It's bipartisan. This has happened through many changes of government in the US and in India. As Prime Minister Vajpayee famously described it almost 2 decades ago, we are natural allies as the 2 largest democracies in the world. Under Prime Minister Modi, I believe the gears have been shifted dramatically. Starting 7 years ago when he first took oath for his first term, Prime Minister Modi surprised a lot of people at how savvy he was about foreign relations and the energy he put into projecting India abroad. And in the process, having worked with now 3 presidents in the US, President Obama, President Trump, and now President Biden, whom he has known for many years on a very personal basis. I will conclude these opening remarks by saying that whether you look at trade, for instance, just a few years ago, when the bilateral trade was at about $80 billion, there was a lot of celebration. We were looking at knocking at the $100 billion mark. And in 2019, we almost touched $150 billion bilateral trade. Of course, the pandemic has has caused an interruption in many things. But the Indian economy is roaring back in recent months. And there are many other examples I can give. Let me just conclude by citing a study that was released last month by one of the major think tanks in India called Young India and the World. And a survey in it points out that Indians consider the United States as the most trusted country. I think that should say it all. This would have been a dream for people like me when we were in college in the US a generation ago. This is a wonderful place to have reached, but I think it's still only early days. There is lots of work to be done together between the two largest democracies.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for setting that stage for us. And it leads naturally to my next question, which is the pandemic, which is trade in the pandemic. You noted that the pandemic has slowed the growth of trade between the countries. That's natural. It's also, I think we must recognize, it's focused countries all over the world on matters at home. How are our workers doing? What is the health of our people? How can we get our essential medical supplies in a globalized world? How can we ensure that we have access to those? India has become such a powerhouse in the medical field. You are the vaccines producer for the world. But we're now at a time when all countries are looking inward. Their voters are asking them, their citizens are asking them to look inward. As you see the next chapter in U.S.-India relations, as we hopefully and blessedly turn the corner from the pandemic, what are the areas of trade and commerce which you think are the most attractive, should be the most attractive for governments, for both of our governments, but also for our industries? Where are we going to find the most cooperation between our countries?
Nelson, I'm glad you mentioned vaccines. Just last week, India crossed 800 million vaccinations. We are rapidly approaching 1 billion vaccinations. And this is the world's largest vaccine program for COVID-19. We've had challenges because we are just about becoming a middle-income country, and we have a long way to go. Yet, over the past year and a half, India has really stepped up in terms of vast increase in our medical capacities. We had challenges with migrant workers. We had challenges with vaccine shortages in the beginning. We even had hiccups in supplies with some friendly countries. We were helping other nations by exporting medicines, both as aid as well as on preferential terms. We have also been exporting vaccines, but because of a terrible second wave a few months ago, we had to concentrate on getting our population vaccinated first. And we are now reaching a level where normalcy is gradually returning. You can see more activity outside. You can see more meetings in person rather than everything being virtual. And what that means is that the markets have picked up. The GDP growth rate is roaring back. The IMF projects India to have the fastest GDP growth rate in the year going forward. This is good news for the India-US relationship on many counts. So one of the red hot areas of the economy is the startup economy. India now has reached third position in the world in the number of startups, in the number of unicorns and potential unicorns. We are having a large number of IPOs happening. And the reason I mention this is because there is a long American connection in India's growth as an IT powerhouse, as a technology powerhouse. And many of these new unicorns and startups in India have funding from US-based funds and venture capitalists and companies. I would like to say that let me not limit our relationship to any one sector. So in this boom, we are seeing a phenomenal growth of infrastructure. People who saw India less than a decade ago are surprised by the quality and the scale of our airports and the expressways and the large number of new ports. All of this, I mentioned a little bit earlier that 77% of young Indians view the US as the most trusted country. And so I think the potential exists in infrastructure, in IT sector, of course, in core industrial sector areas, service sectors. We do need to take advantage of this. I think there's tremendous potential. There are discussions going on about how we improve market access both ways for Indian companies and Indians to the US and vice versa.
Thank you. Let me draw you to an area that you know so well, which is the cooperation between the US Congress and the Indian Parliament. You've been engaged with so many on so many delegations and hosted so many delegations there in India. Right now, in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the chair of the South Asia Subcommittee is a good friend, Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who is a skilled foreign policy practitioner in his own right. And India is fortunate to have such a careful student of foreign affairs heading that subcommittee. As we get back to a time when we might be able to have delegations going back and forth, are there particular areas that you would like to see the parliamentarians on both sides of the ocean combine in the years ahead?
Indeed. As you pointed out, Nelson, I chaired the India-US Parliamentary Forum for 15 of the 19 years I served in Parliament. You yourself and Ambassador Wisner have hosted us on many occasions and vice versa here. I think I am personally raring to go again to have visits both ways, to have Cordell's come here and to have Indian parliamentarians visit the US. Because although the relationship has always been very good on a business-to-business basis, on individuals, there are a large number of Americans of Indian origin and Indian students in America. But this relationship between legislators is equally important because we understand as democracies that the executive branch, the administrations, need to sell these ideas of building relationships to their legislatures. And that's why this is so crucial. One of the areas I hadn't mentioned yet is defense. Now, again, 20 years ago, it would have been unthinkable for India and the US to have this kind of a large defense relationship. Just 3 or 4 years ago, we were celebrating that India had reached a level of acquiring $10 billion worth of US defense equipment. In the meantime, that's gone up to $20 billion. Now keep in mind that in all previous years before the last 20, it had added up to only $500 million, $500 million. So to reach a level of $20 billion acquisition is huge. But I want to point out that India is working very hard to develop its own capacities. The Make in India emphasis of Prime Minister Modi is giving a huge boost to our defense sector as well as many other sectors in the economy. So I would like to urge American friends to look at the larger picture, to look at cooperation, not just for defense equipment and technology, but we have a strategic relationship that goes beyond just the bilateral. The Quad, for instance, India, US, Japan, and Australia, 4 mission to deal with geopolitical challenges. This is something that is keeping on getting strengthened and has recently, with Prime Minister Modi's visit and discussions with President Biden and the heads of government of the other 2 nations, has again taken a big step forward. So I think there is absolutely a whole panorama of things that we ought to be working on. And I would urge counterparts in the US Senate and Congress to keep that in mind.
There's no question that the strategic role of India looms very large in Washington these years. we no longer talk about the Asia Pacific, we talk about the Indo-Pacific, and that is conscious on our part because we need to ensure that India is a key part of our strategies for looking at Greater Asia and looking at the balance of power in Greater Asia and looking for our friends. Who are the people with whom we share values? And as you point out, who are the people with whom we can confidently share technologies that are sensitive and that are of military value? In the 4 or 5 minutes that are left for us, I'd like to take you closer to home. You're one of the national spokespersons for the BJP. You are in charge for two very different states, Delhi and Assam. I've visited Delhi many times. I would love to have the opportunity to visit Assam someday. How do you see your role in domestic politics? And then perhaps you might end us with a few words about the broader political spectrum in India in the years ahead.
The BJP is the world's largest political party with the membership of something around 100. And I think the opportunities are, India is of a continental proportion. There are many opportunities across the nation.
Good. Well, thank you, and I accept. I will go to Assam anytime we can work that out. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you. I think everyone in our audience sees how lucky we are to have you on the Indian side of these powerful India-US coalitions. You know the US so well, you know the relationship so well, you know your politics so well, and frankly, you know our politics so well. So as someone who has known you a long time, sipped tea with you, and perhaps other things over time, I look forward to the future arc of your career and of the roles that you're playing in the BJP, and indeed in a return to active political life on your own, which as a non-Indian, I might say, I hope that lies in your future. What a pleasure to have you. Thank you to USISPF. Thank you to Mukesh Aghi, and thanks to you, Jay, for taking the time to join us, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us for the USISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome our President and CEO, Dr. Mukesh Aghi, to launch the next session, a conversation with the Honorable Minister Pradhan.
Thank you, Minister Pradhan, for being here today. We are so grateful to have Mr. Pradhan, who today is here as Minister of Education, Skill Development, and Entrepreneurship. But in the past, he also has served as Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and equally important portfolio given India's burgeoning energy needs. The minister has been a great friend of USISPF and has made every effort to ensure US-India relationship, especially in the energy sector, is a win-win value proposition. I am reminded of a phrase in Sanskrit which reads, Vidya Parambalam, which means knowledge is strength supreme. For a country like India, that's aiming to grow at 10 to 12%, is always about looking at the future, looking out for posterity, and nothing is more important than giving posterity the tools of a good education. As we all know how education is deeply prioritized in every region in India, this pandemic was so hard because one of the many reasons was that plenty of children and young adults were precluded from in-person learning across schools and colleges. That's where Mr. Pradhan can shed light today on how his ministry leveraged the tools of technology to ensure that learning is not disrupted. Minister Pradhan today speaks about two very crucial aspects to India's future generation. One is education, second is technology, in terms tech ed, and learning during the pandemic era. Because of if India is to achieve its full potential, it can only do so with the future generation. As we move from baby boomer to baby zoomers, ensure that next gen has access to best education and the graduates can compete in a global economic environment. I'm also delighted to invite Punit Ranjan, Global CEO of Deloitte, a friend of Minister Pradhan, and also a board member of USSPF. And once again, Punit, congratulations for winning the USSPF 2021 Global Leadership Awards. Over to you, Punit.
Minister Pradhan, namaste. It is wonderful to see you, and I am really honored that Mukesh said that that you consider me a friend. Every time I meet you in India, it's the highlight of my trip. Minister Pradhan is a star, in my view, in the Modi government under Prime Minister Modi. He has done some great work for his home state of Odisha. And it is always a pleasure to meet you and to spend time with you. Today, we'll be talking about education and skill development, an area of critical importance as India becomes a $5 trillion economy. And as Mukesh said, is going to be absolutely critical in turbocharging the journey towards that $5 trillion economy, hopefully in the very near future. Minister Pradhan, welcome, Pradhanji. And let's start with the US-India Education Partnership and with education cooperation and higher education. It's one of the foundational pillars of the US-India Partnership. Many Indians like me came to the United States to study, and of course have built a life here in the United States, though still have a very strong affinity to India. My question to you to start off is, how can we strengthen, expand, and leverage the strategic partnership between the US and India through higher education, collaboration, to really harness the economic opportunities and innovation?
Thank you, Punitji. Thank you, Mukeshji. Thank you, USISPF, for inviting me to the 4th annual summit. We have our old bondage with both of you, Punitji and Mukeshji. Whichever role I have been assigned in India, you never forgot me. You always very warm and cooperative with me. And before I answer your question, let me give you a big thanks. The way both of you come to help us during the second wave in India's COVID-19 crisis. We cannot forget your contribution, your responsibility towards your own motherland. Being the part of US, you have taken care of India in a big way. Thank you for that. Punitji, rightly you have put a question. What is the future strategic relationship between US and India? When I was in charge of energy sector and now I'm in charge of education sector, I see lot of opportunity, lot of natural bondage between both the countries. Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to United States and the way both the global leader, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, jointly commit in front of the global community how natural ally we are, how natural friends we are, and what are our priority area. I'm happy Energy is a priority area for both of our relationship. So education. 200,000 Indian students are reading in America. More than 15 billion US dollar has been earned by American university from Indian students. Starting from community college level to high-end research and technology collaboration, we have our natural cooperation and collaboration. And we are supposed to have some higher education working group at both the end, and I'm confident in this area also, because America is a great believer of knowledge-based economy, and India is a natural place, and both of you are the example of Indian knowledge-based economic relationship with the globe and especially with America. You belong to India, you adopted a new country, you adopted a new ecosystem, and you are contributing not only America, not only India, to the global ecosystem. This is the relationship between two democracies. By collaboration, by strategic partnership, both of us can not only serve our own country's interests, but we can create answer for global crisis and global challenges. This should be the nature of our strategic partnership, and I see great future of this relationship.
Pradhanji, I think very interesting. I wasn't aware that $15 billion is spent by Indian students in America. That is a very large and remarkable number. And I completely agree with you that the US and India are natural allies. Building on what you just said around how education is so important, not only to India, but to the global community, the new education policy of 2020 has been warmly received by our members. In your view, what will India's workforce look like in the next 5 years? And what will the internationalization of education, specifically the collaboration with American and foreign universities, what role will that play in the education of India's workforce?
Punitji, you have rightly mentioned about the NEP 2020. After 34 years, after 3 decades, we come out with a national education policy, which is anyway newer one, with lot of feature looking into our global requirement. If I say in this way, we want to create global citizen, we want to develop global mindset, because the problems are nowadays not only related to a limited geography or limited community. Let us take the example of sustainability, climate. The way the globe is now discussing, deliberating, and affected by the climate change concerns. Entire community, entire human community has to come to at one point and agree on one point how to face that. With this background, our NEP has given an ample opportunity and ample scope to think in this way. You are rightly mentioned, internationalization of our Indian education ecosystem, twinning of universities, online education, global standard skill impact in the Indian students, because lot of Indian students are now part of global economy, global knowledge-based economy. It is not only is going to benefit Indian community. We want to, education, knowledge, these all are global issues, global commodities, global challenges. We want to create an ecosystem in our Indian education where we will have our solution at the domestic front, so at the global front. So India and America, again I will re-emphasize, being a democratic country, believer of democratic practices, rightly Mukeshji has in his introduction speech mentioned, how do we come out of misery? How do we come out? It is only through empowerment. What kind of empowerment is knowledge-based empowerment? Education is the instrument for come out of the misery and concerns. And India strength is knowledge. India's strength is its human resource. Knowledge-based human resource is not only going to solve the challenge of India, it is going to create a comprehensive model. It's a collaborative model for global community. So in NEP, we have mentioned all such things. We want to give skill or vocational training at an early stage. We want to create, we are prioritize our education should be inclusive, our education should be equitable, our education should be affordable, our education should be accessible. In the age group of 3, now in India we are planning to have preschool education ecosystem in our country. That means at the age of 3 to age of 23. This 20 years, these 2 decades in a human being's life or a citizen's life is very important. In India, this number is 520 million. We have 10 million teachers. We want to create a global model. And we have in India, we have our responsibility towards emerging economy. Our knowledge base is not only going to answer our concern. When this is the challenge, we have a well-thought document in name of NEP, where how do we, by this year 2021, India is celebrating 75th year of independence. By next 25 years, when we'll have the next round of education policy, by next 25 years, India will be attaining its 100th Independence Day, 100th Independent Year. This 25 years journey is very important for India, and NEP is our document. NEP has given a pathway, roadmap to fulfill that aspiration.
Minister Pradhanji, you mentioned the Mahamari, as we say in India, that we have just navigated this COVID-19 tragedy. And one thing that has come to the fore has been digital. There has been more digitization in the last 18, 19 months than there has been in the last 5 years. In our discussion this morning with a couple of other ministers, with Minister Goyal yesterday, in response to a question that I posed to him, he said digital is going to play a very important role. Minister Pradhan, from an education standpoint, what role do you envision digital playing in this new education policy, in getting Indian education to the next level, and also bridging this divide between the urban and rural communities, as you mentioned? What role do you believe digital is going to play?
Punitji, let me inform a very good news to USISPF friends. As I said, India has a community of teachers of around 10 million. Today morning only, at the end of this month, when I took review, how many of them are vaccinated, how many of them are now protected, around 100% of this community of teachers and non-teaching staff are now 100% vaccinated. The number is near total, 98, 99, 99%, 5. This is the number of the different states. Gradually, we are going to open up our schools. Almost all states, barring few states, 2-3 states, almost all states have started opening their own school, and they are gradually coming back to the class. How do we spend last 2 years? And how do we plan to spend next few years? Here lies the answer with digitalization. When a human being put into crisis, put into challenge, he find out new pathways. So in India, digitalization is a story, is a case to be studied properly. In last 2 years, lot of innovation come out, not only for teaching, learning practices, for education infrastructure, for education administration. And in our NEP, we have given ample emphasis how to digitalize our entire education ecosystem, starting from student registration, starting from school, college, university running administration, starting from preschool education ecosystem, learning, teaching, pedagogic ecosystem to higher education. How to give skill training, impart skill-based education. We all need digital methodology, digital way to achieve the target. In the last 2 years, using satellite, using internet, using radio frequency, we could successfully, I cannot say we have an answer of 100%. The world is facing unprecedented crisis. There is a substantial learning loss, knowledge loss of last 2 years. But now we are confident by using technology, by using digital methodology, digital network, we will come out of this crisis. We have already come out of this crisis, but how to make over the last 2 years substantial loss and how to create the new architect for the next few decades. Digitalization is a priority area. Prime Minister Modi in last 2 years given utmost emphasis. In 2020, 15 August speech from the Red Fort, Prime Minister has committed to the country. By 1000 day, India is going to put internet connectivity to all its villages. 0.6 million villages are in India. We have an ambitious plan to connect through internet to all the villages. That means 1.5 million schools are there. We want to create an internet network to all the schools. We have reformed our space policy by opting the new space technology. We have liberalized our space technology. We want to create a new education pedagogy utilizing space, utilizing satellites. We are very committed, we are very determined to convert our conventional teaching learning methodology to technology-based methodology. AI, blockchain, AR, VR, these are the new skill methodology we are imparting to the lower grade schools, lower grade classrooms. And we are very much aligned. We know the global requirement, we know the global challenge. We don't want to miss the bus. We want to utilize Industrial Revolution 4.0 in our favor. And in this context, I must congratulate you, Punitji. You personally, as an individual, you have committed in a big way how to give digital literacy to women of this country, to girl child of this country, from your corporation, pure entrepreneurial model. Now, through innovative schemes of Vidyanjali, where citizen of this country, citizen, Indian origin citizen, those who are residing in the different part of globe will contribute, utilizing digital way, material and knowledge to their own schools, to the community schools. So I say digital methodology is not only going to help us in the only teaching learning area, it is going to create a new education architect for us.
Well, Minister Pradhanji, we're nearly at the end of our time. We are really grateful that out of your busy schedule that you made time for us. But I have one question, my last question. Deloitte just did a study. Even in the midst of this pandemic, India is a very attractive destination for foreign direct investment. And one of the things that is attractive of India, of course, certainly the rule of law, the largest democracy, great market, but it is the demographic dividend. And they also talk about, in that study, we found that reskilling or skilling of individuals is really important. You mentioned world class that Deloitte is doing. what would you ask our members? We have 200 multinational corporations that are part of US ISPF. What would you want us to do to help you, your ministry, India, in the reskilling of the Indian students?
Thank you, Puniji. You come to rescue me in a big way. I will consciously use not help to collaborate. I expect collaboration from friends from US ISPF, because if we'll skill, reskill, upskill the Indian workforce, the globe will get affordable commodity, affordable manufacturing products, manufactured products for the global consumption. We don't have any, as rightly you have said, production line is not important. Who is production is important. Is he committed to the global requirement? Is he coming to the rescue global need at an appropriate time? India has proven its credibility last pandemic period. So we want to, from global industrial community and agency like US ISPF, an organization like yours, we expect. Let us collaborate, let us reskill, upskill and orient our students, our community in India. Let us enhance our capacity of our Indian manpower, workforce. In that way, globe and interworld will get affordable, quality products for its requirement.
Very important point, Minister Pradhan. It is in everybody's interest. It's been wonderful to see you and really honored that you made time for us. Thank you very much. बहुत खुशी हुई आपसे बात करके. Mukesh, I will turn it back to you.
The USISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome Mr. Dow Wilson, CEO of Varian Medical Systems, to introduce our next session, a conversation with the Honorable Minister Jaishankar.
Thank you. Just as said, I'm Dow Wilson, CEO of Varian Medical Systems. We recently combined. We were acquired by Siemens Healthineers. It's broadened our portfolio to be an end-to-end cancer company. Beyond cancer, Siemens Healthineers has actively and very swiftly moved to help out the Indian government to assist the COVID-19 recovery effort by providing critical hospital supplies, medicines, and food as well. We've built 7 oxygen plants across the country and donated over 500 concentrators. I'm very pleased this morning to introduce Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs for the Government of India. Many of us have worked with the minister throughout his esteemed career, whether during his time as ambassador to the United States or as foreign secretary. Dr. Jaishankar spent his career in the Indian Foreign Service before leading Tata Sons Global Corporate Affairs team. His call to public service was so strong that he returned to government, as you know, in 2019 as the Minister of External Affairs. Certainly been an exciting time to be working in external affairs. As you all know, last week the Quad met for a historic meeting in the midst of a global pandemic to discuss everything from pandemic preparedness to resilient supply chains to 5G infrastructure deployment and much, much more. As we've learned this week in our sessions, and as there's been a growing awareness, there are not many relationships that are more vital than the one between the United States and India. In fact, many of our conversations have focused just on exactly that. How can we amplify the vitality of our bilateral relationships through trade, investment, and mutual support? While COVID-19 is, of course, top of mind to many, so many of us thinking about tomorrow. How can we support our economies to get through this global pandemic? How can we strengthen the healthcare system in our respective countries so we can bring quality care to more people? How can we ensure and strengthen the resilience of supply chains to support both of our economies? And perhaps most importantly, what does the future of the U.S.-India relationship look like? Look forward to hearing remarks on this. Dr. Jaishankar, thank you so much for joining us. A pleasure to see you again, and I'll turn the time over to you. We really look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure really to join you all today, and I say this as someone who's served on your board and welcomes the opportunity to see you all, even if it is virtual. I think this is a particularly good time to discuss our relationship for a variety of reasons. The most obvious one, of course, is that we've just come out of a visit to Washington, D.C. The Prime Minister was there. He had a bilateral visit, in fact, his first meeting in person with President Biden as president. And that is important in itself. But more than that, there was also a Quad in-person leaders summit, and the first one again. So that too was very, very noteworthy. And as you all know, this is a time when the UN General Assembly meets, the high-level segment, and so traditionally end September is a time for a kind of a global stock taking. So whether it's bilateral, whether it's a kind of a group, a plurilateral effort, or a larger global sort of assessment, as I said, this is a very, very good time to discuss our relationship. Now, if I were to give you a single message coming from all of that, that message would be that in terms of the big picture, the issues of the day and how do we deal with them, how do we respond to them, I think today there is a very good fit between India and the United States. And to me, it was very telling that the outcome document from the bilateral visit actually is called a partnership, India and US, a partnership for global good. And I'm sure many of you would agree that this is not a phrase which we would have used even 5 years ago. So it tells you really how far the relationship has come. Now, where is the relationship today? I think it has grown over the last 15 years. It continues to progress very steadily. Trade is around $150 billion level. It, of course, came down last year to 120, but I'm very confident this year, in fact, it would go even higher. Investments, that's a tricky one. You normally don't get good figures, and the routing confuses people. But the fact that last year we got the highest ever FDI at $82 billion, and a very large part of it was American, I think should tell us something. Officially, of course, the investment which we record coming out of the US is $62 billion, but my sense is it is very much more than that. Defense has seen, again, continuous progress in terms of defense trade. We had a recent acquisition of the MH-60R helicopters, the Harpoon missiles. But more than the trade itself, I think the policy exchanges have been very effective. The exercises between our militaries continue. The framework for cooperation has actually steadily gathered more substance and obviously provides more opportunities. And apart from these, if you look at the, what's really been the defining characteristic of our relationship, which is the people-to-people ties, the science and technology, innovation, connections that we have, the flow of students, which is so important for us. I think all these, despite the COVID, have actually progressed. Now, interestingly, in fact, the COVID itself has helped to reinforce our bonds. When we had the second wave this summer, which was exceptionally severe, the US was one of the countries which really stepped out for us. I think Doe Wilson spoke about what they had done, but it would only be right on this occasion for me to use this forum to express my appreciation for what the US generally, US business, US ISPF have actually done on that occasion. Now, while I've spoken about the relationship, I think it's also important that at the American end, there is a good appreciation of the changes which have taken place in India at this very time, because that would enable us really to look at future possibilities in a more constructive way. One change, of course, emanates from the COVID. All of us have been through this trial. How we have each come out is a individual story. But the fact is that after going through a situation where we had more than 400,000 caseloads on a daily basis, today our numbers are very much smaller. A large part of the challenge is behind us, which doesn't mean, of course, that we let our guard down. And probably the most effective response we have is in terms of vaccination. We are today vaccinating more than 10 million people on a daily basis. There's been one day, of course, when we reached 25 million. So the fact that the COVID response, not just between us, but also how, and I'll come to that perhaps when we get into a discussion on the Quad. What do we do to help the world? As I say, a partnership for global good. The other noteworthy point has been that in our responses, we have actually been fiscally very sensible. A lot of our response has been the right degree of support at the right time, at the right place, on the right issues, in the right manner. So while responding to the growth challenges and the recovery challenges of COVID, actually we have done it in a manner in which, with a great deal of responsibility, with a much more, I would say, medium-term strategy of recovery, and that is, of course, beginning to yield dividends now. Even while the COVID was going on, you actually had a country which has not sat, and a government which has not sat on its hands. It's again interesting to see big reforms have taken place at this time. The production-linked incentive reform, which has really given a boost to manufacturing, the labor code reform, the agricultural reforms, which have given small farmers a fairer deal and is really encouraging greater agro businesses. The education reform, I think some of these, even the National Asset Monetization Program, I think these are very noteworthy features of what has happened in India, and I think American business should really study that carefully. And as a result of which, we have today, I think, a fairly robust recovery underway. There is a great deal of confidence that we would meet our 9.5% growth target. Trade exports have been actually very, very strong as well. That too is a good sign and speaks for our greater competitiveness. Now, as we sit down with our American partners and look at the world, I think there are three big regional theaters which are important in that discussion. One, of course, is in South Asia itself, where historically we have not always worked together. I think that's beginning to change, and that's good for both of us. The second is the Indo-Pacific. The arena and the challenges of that arena, I think, are quite unique. They are still unfolding. In many ways, this is where the commitment to global good will be tested, and this is among the many solutions for that, of course, is the Quad platform on which we have both agreed to work together. And the developments which have happened in Afghanistan, what they mean for our security, your security, regional and global security. So, and finally, because, as I said, I'm here for the UNGA, and this is a time for global stock taking, I would conclude by underlining that at the United Nations, at the multilateral arena in general, there is much greater cooperation and a meeting of minds on many issues than we've had before. I'm not suggesting that we agree on everything. I think we come from different places with different histories. But certainly that too has evolved very, very positively. So overall, I would present to all of you a very positive picture of a relationship. We are at an important juncture. I think the discussions in Washington have opened up many more new possibilities. They have indicated a direction, not just for our relationship, but also for how we work with our friends and partners. So perhaps these might serve as adequate opening remarks for Ambassador Wisner to quiz me further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now invite USISPF board member Ambassador Frank Wisner to join us to moderate the conversation with Dr. Jaishankar.
Mr. Minister, again, welcome. I'm delighted you're able to take the time to be with us and to do as you've just done, set a broad stage view of the U.S.-India relationship. But I'm going to ask you if you could take even a step back from that. We are watching the world go through quite fundamental changes, transformations that are affecting literally every nation. And the last several months, as you noted, have been really tumultuous. Afghanistan, the collapse of the government there, the events and tensions in the South China Sea, the Quad, the AUKUS agreement and controversies with Europe on the American front, many other events, hunger, you've noted. So as India sits back and looks at the stage we're at in the world today, what's your assessment in terms of India's interests? How does India see this period of transformation, and where strategically do you want to set your sights?
Well, first of all, Frank, good to see you, and I hope you're keeping well. So let me respond to this. I think we don't have the luxury of sitting back, as you said, and looking at it. I think we need to wade in more and more. This is a very, very tumultuous, very dynamic global situation. So it's important to shape it, to participate in it, to ensure that this goes the right way for us and for the rest of the world. Now, many of the challenges that you laid out are really our major preoccupations. I think when we look at what happened in Afghanistan and the region, I think this is going to have very, very significant consequences for all of us, and we are so close to the region. So there are a set of concerns and issues that flow from that. There is when we look on to east of India, and you see the Indo-Pacific and the importance there of really ensuring that life goes on the basis of broad principles and concepts which the international community is comfortable with, which is concepts of rule of law, of freedom of overflight and navigation, peaceful resolution of disputes, or respecting territorial integrity. I mean, all these do matter out there. I look at my own region, and when I look at my region, I think it's important for me that my prosperity and growth become sort of a larger lifting tide for the region, and that the choices which are made in the region, not just by us, but by our neighbors as well, are choices which are supportive of a much more multipolar, much more democratic, much more rebalanced global situation. So believe me, there's plenty to do, and we are at it.
Minister, and clearly, as you indicated in your remarks, at the core of your international perspective lies the American relationship. So let me turn to that for a moment and get you to talk a bit more. You've mentioned frequently over the years India's commitment to multipolarity. Give me a perspective for your audience today as to how a relationship with the United States and a commitment to multipolarity work out in Indian foreign policy's vision.
Well, I think, Frank, if we look back at a history which both of us have been through in our professional lives, when we started with the Cold War and a degree of, I would say, polarization, but with countries like us very much in the middle, trying to expand our space and our choices. Then in the 90s, we moved to a world which was much more dominated by the United States. Now, today, what we are seeing is actually a rebalancing. I mean, if you look, for example, at the top 20 economies, that list is quite different from what it was 50 years ago. Now, if the economic list is different at some point of time, the political strategic list would also be different, and that's what's happening. And here, of course, the rise of China has been the single biggest change, but the growth of India is also part of that transformation. Now, when we speak of a multipolar world, we do think today that the big issues of the day cannot be decided by one, or I emphasize, two powers. I think it needs a larger group think, a group decide. It needs a buy-in by the rest of the world. So we need, in a sense, I would say, a more management board which is much more fairly representative of the shareholders in our planet. And that's what we advocate, and I think that's beginning to happen.
And that, of course, does not detract from the U.S.-India relationship. It simply is a part of it.
Not at all. On the contrary, I would argue, let us say among the major shareholders, they need to get along with each other. And we are two who are very comfortable with each other and are getting more and more comfortable. And very frankly, I would also add that I see a big change at the American end, a much greater willingness on the part of the United States to work with other partners, not necessarily on terms that the US has unilaterally set. I think the US is also getting beyond that era of alliances and treaty-based relationships. It's a far more flexible, I would say, diverse, differentiated world out there, and I think American policymakers are beginning to adjust to that, and some of that you see in arrangements like Quad.
That's a very encouraging statement about the United States, and I think at core you're right. But one of the great changes in our relationship in my decades of experience with India has been the emergence of the Quad as a framework for bringing Indian action, Australian, Japanese, American action together. I wonder if you could pause and describe for all of us, what does the Quad mean for India? What is its purpose? What do you want it to accomplish?
I would actually go beyond just speaking for India, because I think we've just come out of Quad, so I think I can speak with a fair degree of assurance on what the other three partners also feel. Look, we are four countries actually located at four different corners, if you would, of the Indo-Pacific, who have a lot of shared interests, who have a very common, I would say, values and beliefs, who, as a consequence of all of this, have a high degree of comfort on working together on the immediate and more than immediate concerns of the whole region. Now, typically, people tend to look at issues like, maritime security, exercises, maybe connectivity, HADR. These were some of the early issues on it. But I would argue that especially this year, as all four countries have invested more energy and creativity into Quad, we are actually seeing a whole lot of new issues which come up. If you look at this leaders meeting, one big takeaway was a Quad vaccine initiative, where the US is actually giving the technology and to some degree the resources. India is actually the production center of the vaccine. Japan is funding a lot of the purchasing of the vaccine, and Australia is helping out with the distribution of the vaccine. So we committed that this initiative will deliver at least 1 billion vaccines into the Indo-Pacific. Or let me give you another agreement which we worked out, which was on the principles of technology, design, development, governance, and use. Because today, the usage of technology is a very, very important subject in the international discourse. But there are, we are discussing critical emerging technologies. We are discussing health security. We actually announced a Quad fellowship program. We've had, resilient supply chains is another issue. So semiconductor supply chains was an issue as well. So it's, I think, broadened out much more. I think the more these four countries with their levels of comfort sit down, talk, look at the world, respond to the challenges. I think the beauty of Quad is precisely because it is not, it is not rigid. It's not formal. It's very comfortable and easygoing. I mean, the agenda is made up responding to the requirements of the times. So I actually see it very frankly as a very new model of cooperation among like-minded countries.
It's interesting as you go through the focus of the Quad, you've actually not mentioned China. And while I think you're absolutely right to have given the Quad a broad definition, give me some insight into India's perspective on how we, our two countries, are managing the complex issue of the rise of Chinese power. You've had a distinctive approach to that. We've adopted ways of looking and dealing with China. Are we on the same track?
I want to make one thing clear, Frank. The Quad is for things. It's not against somebody. And actually, if you look at the Quad statement actually says that. It says we are for rule of law. We are for freedom of overflight. We are for peaceful resolution of disputes. We are for democratic values. We are for territorial integrity of states. So I think it's very important not to be sort of railroaded into some kind of negative discourse, which actually is not from our script. It is somebody else's script, and I don't think we should fall for that. I think we need to be positive. All of us have a fundamental right to cooperate with partners. I think it's important that others should not have a veto on our choices. It's part of a democratic world order. But on your question of how do we deal with the rise of China, I would say in many ways those are bilateral choices that all of us have to make. We each have a very substantial relationship with China, and in many ways, China being today such a big player and so salient in the international economy, I think it's natural that these relationships are quite unique. So what are my problems or my opportunities would not be the same as that for the United States or Australia or Japan or in Indonesia or France. It would be different for each country. But the fact is, again, I would put to you that, the rise of, obviously the rise of China has had a very fundamental impact on the international order. So as participants in the international order, we need to assess that and respond to that in the light of our own interests. I think it's it's important. It's sort of essential to normalize this conversation. This should not end up as though it's some kind of ganging up and a negatively driven event. I don't think that's a fair description of what is a completely natural evolution of the international order, to my mind.
Minister, I hear you, and that's a very welcome message and signal. Let me bring you a little bit closer to home for a moment, and that's the crisis that's still ongoing in Afghanistan. The events of August are really dramatic. As India looks at what's happened in Afghanistan, how do you assess the threat level that your nation now faces, and how are you responding to that?
Well, I think to some degree, Frank, we would all be will all be justified in having levels of concern. And to some degree, I think the jury is still out. When I say levels of concern, there were commitments which were made by the Taliban at Doha. I mean, the US knows that best. I mean, we were not taken into confidence on various aspects of that. So whatever were the deals which were struck in Doha, I mean, one has a broad sense, but beyond that, are we going to see an inclusive government? Are we going to see, respect for the rights of women, children, minorities? Most important, are we going to see an Afghanistan where, which is not whose soil is not used for terrorism against other states and the rest of the world? I think these are our concerns. These concerns were actually captured by a UN Security Council resolution in August called 2593. And I think how those concerns are addressed today is still an open question, which is why I said the jury is still out. So if you ask me, are you concerned? Obviously we are. If you ask me, is this the time to, make draw sharp conclusions? I would sort of take my time and study this with a certain degree of deliberation, because as I said, a lot of this, whatever understandings there have been, many of these are not known to the international community.
Minister, as the United States and India look at Afghanistan, are we on similar pages with regard to questions like recognition, assistance, threat of terror? Are our lines of communications open? Do we see things in a similar manner?
I think we are on similar pages at a principal level on many of these issues. Certainly, say, terrorism, the usage of Afghan soil for terrorism is something which both of us feel very strongly, and it was something which was discussed when Prime Minister Modi met President Biden. It was in the outcome document. Again, look, there would be issues on which we would agree more. There would be issues on which we would agree less. Our experiences in some respects are different than yours. We have been victims of cross-border terrorism ourselves from that region. Let us say that has shaped in many ways our view of some of the neighbors of Afghanistan. So Now, how much, the US shares that view, and where is it that the US sort of makes its tactical compromises? I think that is for the Americans to figure out.
Minister, that of course includes the signals we jointly send to Pakistan. How do you see those signals evolving?
Well, I mean, we obviously watch a lot of your own domestic debates on this matter, and I noticed that you've been having a rather animated debate on this subject in the last few days. But as I said, there are aspects that we share, and there are aspects where maybe our positions are not exactly the same.
Minister, we only have a moment left, and I want to get your view on one of the most consequential issues the entire world faces, and that's climate change. Glasgow is just on the edge. Do you want to give us a picture of how India is approaching its commitments at Glasgow and the policies you intend to pursue?
Well, look, I think as we go into Glasgow, and Frank, I speak here as a veteran of Paris, the world doesn't have that much good news. The limited amount of good news includes the fact that India is the only G20 country which has kept its Paris commitments. And there's been enormous progress in terms of growth of renewable energy, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of intensity of energy of emissions, in terms of forestation, biodiversity, water usage. So I think we have a record which is a very, very credible record which we are taking into Glasgow, and obviously we have our own vision and ideas of what to do. But I wish I could say that for the rest of the world, because I want you to reflect on this for a moment. We are supposed to go into Glasgow with a Rescue the Planet package. Okay, compare the Rescue the Planet package of 100 billion, for which we are still struggling to raise resources, with Rescue America package. Think of what 100 billion means. Okay, $100 billion is less than the money which NFL is making from media rights. And yet we are struggling to raise $100 billion. And we claim that it's an existential issue. So I think the world needs to get serious about it. We need to strive for net zero, but net zero, global net zero means that the developing countries must still have the room to grow, and that the developed countries need to do their own net zero and net minus. So we need a kind of a, I would say, a more sincere, more honest, and frankly, a much more serious effort at addressing this challenge.
Minister, you've given us a real treat today. A view of India's vision of the world and what's going on, of our relationship, the direction of the Quad, relations with China, how to deal with Afghanistan, and finally, a ringing statement on climate change. If we had more time, I would want to pursue economics, but I'm afraid the clock is run out, and I need to turn the floor back over to our hosts. But again, thank you, sir, for your candor and your willingness to be with us.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now invite Ajit Mohan, USISPF India Advisory Board member and Managing Director and Vice President of Facebook India, to deliver some closing remarks.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor and privilege to go after that fantastic discussion between the Honorable Minister Jaishankar and Ambassador Wisner that covered such a wide range of issues that underlie the massive and accelerating strategic partnership between India and the United States. Thank you to the Honorable Minister for his candor and his willingness to address the many big areas of common interest, as well as the occasional differences in this discussion, especially given that this is a community that is keen to see even greater depth and allyship between the two countries. And thank you to Ambassador Wisner for moderating the discussion. For all those of us watching this discussion, it highlights not just the massive progress that's been made in the last few years, not just the depth in the relationship between the two countries and the valuable role even non-governmental leaders and the private sector plays in augmenting this engagement between the governments. It also highlights yet again how critical this partnership is for shaping the future of the world, including the emerging economic order shaped by new technologies and the global collaboration around those technologies. India and the United States are both at the heart of a global transformation where digital is playing a central role in changing lives, in creating opportunity, and in spurring entirely new models of innovation and enterprise. And I know the discussion did not go into detail on the economic side, but the context of that discussion again underlines that when the United States and India come together to create global and interoperable frameworks and common standards, the world benefits, or to use the ambassador's language, when these two major shareholders in the world who get along with each other quite well come along to create global common frameworks, all of us benefit. Our promise to leaders from both India and the United States is that we stand by these important efforts to protect and create a more open world, and one in which trade and investment in the two countries and between the two countries play a key role in spurring opportunity and prosperity on both sides. Minister Jaishankar and Ambassador Wisner, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This concludes our program for today. Please join us again tomorrow for our final day of programming starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you then.